on Senate Bill 459, and the chair recognizes Senator Gannon, the prime sponsor of the bill. Senator, thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative Lynn. Good to see you again. I think you were just with me yesterday somewhere, or maybe many places. Let's see, 459. So why did I do 59? We get all these biological sex bills. I read the governor's veto message from Sununu. I don't think last year Governor Ayotte had a veto message. I thought I did read one, but my aide told me I was just reading statements that she had released about how and what should pass. So I eliminated one section of most biological bills, and I stuck with the sports fields, I stuck with the locker rooms, and I stuck with the prisons. Those are the three areas addressed in this legislation. And the other area was purposefully not put in because I believe it will pass muster, and I'm someone who likes 3/4 of a loaf rather than none of the loaf. So on sports fields, they give my daughters, I'll just use them as like an example of all our daughters in the state. They give my daughters a chance to, my oldest one was very shy. She made a team, and so I was lucky. She was probably the 10th one to make the team. One more person, she would have been cut. She wouldn't have got opportunities to grow and develop, to learn leadership skills, opportunities for college. All my girls and my son have played in college. It helped them experience colleges that they probably never would have got an opportunity or thought of applying to. So that opportunity could be lost if we have trans or males on the sports fields with them. Males have approximately 35% more upper and lower body strength. I've personally witnessed my Timberlane student taking on a much larger trans athlete. It was just, she did really well, tried her hardest, but physically, should something have happened, he was certainly 6'8" inches taller, nearly a 6 foot tall, much heavier, much larger, much stronger. The idea of sports under Title IX were always to give girls opportunities, like we just spoke of being able to thrive, learn leadership skills, learn skills that they'll take to work with other people, that they can take to the business world. And again, that's one aspect of the bill. Another aspect is locker rooms. The corner office has said they would accept locker rooms. There's a compelling state interest to protect the privacy rights of females and or males in the male bathroom. But for privacy purposes, we feel there's a compelling state interest and that this is narrowly tailored by keeping the males out of the female locker room or vice versa. The other area is we've had problems in our prisons, and I feel the matrons or the wardens are best to decide what situation and who should be in what prison. So we want to leave it up to them, and we don't want them to be dictated on how to segregate for the safety of their inmates. And that's about it. Everything you've probably heard. I think there's 4 or 5 bills coming out of here. We have a couple other biological sex bills that have come out of the Senate, which I'm not sure if they're coming to your committee or others. So I think it's an issue we've all hashed over many times in the last 6 years probably. And so again, I believe this bill, according to what I've read, according to my talk with the corner office, this is a bill that could possibly pass their muster come May or June. Questions?
Questions? Thank you, Senator. Questions for this witness? Senator,
I represent Corrigan. I'm usually on the other side of the table with you.
Okay, well, good to see you.
Always good to see you, sir.
And I don't know much about the details of it, but I know there's a news story about one of my family who lives in the Oyster River School District, where I live, where they have their older child is a daughter who's been playing lacrosse on boys teams, and she wants to continue playing on the boys team because they feel that the standard of play in girls lacrosse is not sufficient to prepare their daughter for the style.
So this legislation,
would they still be allowed to have their daughter play on the boys team?
So as we have seen, I believe she was Muncie, the hockey player. Was she not a Concord girl? She played on the boys hockey team, I believe, was named, isn't it? It's Muncie. You guys should know.
Muncie, yeah.
What? And
Yeah.
so she got to play on the boys' team. She posed no threat or imminent danger to the boys, is the difference that a biological male or a trans would present to a female athlete. So again, she is just having the opportunity to play because the competition is better at the male level, but she doesn't, she would present no danger to the males, and she would be allowed under this legislation to play on the boys' team.
Other questions? Yes, Representative Smith.
Thank you. Thanks. Good to be here.
You assume, or is it safe to assume that as a rule, all men are better than all women at sports?
No, but it is true that they have a larger body. On average, there's exceptions to every rule, but on average, males have a much bigger body mass, much bigger muscular system. Their muscles are stronger. They're just there's a biological difference between males and females on average. Now you could have. I watched that girl play NCAA hoops, who certainly was better than I was when I was in college. She led her team on. She was a center. I think she was 6'8". So it would be a unique, different problem. But I tend to make my legislation and for the 98%, 99%, not the 1% outlier.
Could I follow up?
Yes, sure.
Historically, as a society, we have assumed that people of color, particularly Black, are better athletes than white players. So should you consider an amendment that also says that we want to
No,
limit?
I think race would be a total outside issue than sex. It's an immutable characteristic that you have a color. It doesn't assure that someone's bigger or stronger. Our days of being racist, I think, are long behind us. I don't think that's a problem. I don't think any race is inherently better or bigger. Maybe they are tall on average. I'd have to look at an average, but no, it's different than the sexes.
Other questions for this witness? Yes, Representative Birch.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator, for your
Thanks for having me.
testimony here. Am I correct in understanding your bill that allows the classification of I'm talking in the prison context now. The classification of persons can be done solely on the basis of biological sex?
Yes.
If I may follow up.
Yes.
How does that work with the requirements of the Farmer case that requires individual assessments as to where somebody's classified?
I'll have to read the Farmer case. My apologies.
May I follow up?
Sure.
How does that absence of individualized assessment, which the Supreme Court required in the Farmer case, how does that correlate with what's called, with the PREA, the Prison Rape Elimination Act, a congressional act that, again, requires individual case-by-case classification decisions?
I will follow up with you later today, this afternoon, and I'll send you a memo. I'm not on top of it, so I'd rather wait.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Yes, Representative Sir.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Senator, for taking my question.
Thank you, Representative.
One of the sponsors of one of the other bills that we had, the question came up of can one's biological sex change after birth? And so I guess I'd like to hear your answer on that.
Well, I guess if I was a frog, it could change.
Sorry, say it again.
I was being light, I'm sorry.
Oh, frog.
I was being maybe too light. But no, I would say it cannot change. You have the same DNA composition, the same chromosomes. The Olympic Committee just came out and said males, they're going to separate by biological sex. They're doing a swab test so they can tell what your genetic composition was at birth. And that's how they're going to go in the next Olympics, by biological sex.
Okay, could I follow up?
Sure.
So, the reason I asked that is there's one fairly well documented case from Texas where this type of rule was imposed on girls wrestling. And the athlete's name was Mac Beggs. I don't know if you're familiar with the Mac Beggs case.
I'm familiar with a few wrestling cases, but I don't know them by name.
So I guess my question is, does it concern you in that instance, a trans boy who wished to wrestle as a boy because he was nominally born as biological female based on their assessment, was forced to wrestle on the girls wrestling team and for 2 years in a row became the undefeated statewide girls wrestling champion because of that against his will? And I'm worried that the assertion that this is going to prevent that seems like it could actually cause it.
Again, I'll ponder that, and I can, in my afternoon when I'm getting back to Representative Birch, I'll get back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions for this witness?
Chair, I wonder if you would like to point out to the distinguished senator that it is your intention to vote on all of these bills today, so that if the senator plans to get back later this afternoon, it would be after this committee has already voted on the bills.
Well, that is true. We are going to reject these bills
Okay.
today.
One of my esteemed senators behind me, Senator Abbas, who was a renowned wrestler, may have more enlightenment on the wrestling bill. So I'll wait. I'll probably hang around and see his testimony.
All right.
And that may answer your question.
Other questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
With regard to the other witnesses, I'm just going to say I'm going to impose a 2-minute time limit on testimony from other witnesses. And so I first will call on Bonnie Bruno, please, from Hollis, New Hampshire.
Thank you.
Good morning. Thanks for having this hearing. And I would say actually this bill is written for the less than 1%, but I'm here to oppose SB 459 along with at least 351 Granite Staters that signed in, and the majority over there on the blue slips. But I want to begin by acknowledging the people who have concerns about privacy, safety in certain places, and family and fairness in athletics, and to say that SB 459 is not the solution to these concerns. New Hampshire law already protects people from harassment, assault, and misconduct, regardless of who is involved or where it occurs. Privacy is not meaningfully or measurably assured in SB 459. Concerns about athletics are nuanced and situational, best handled locally, not by writing broad permissions for discrimination into statewide law. The problem with SB 459 is that it legalizes discrimination while solving no real problem. Governor Sununu recognized this when he vetoed a previous bathroom bill, HB 396. When Governor Ayotte vetoed HB 148 and SB 268, she acknowledged these concerns, but ultimately concluded that bills like SB 459 are overly broad, impractical to enforce, and risk creating an exclusionary environment. Laws shape more than policy. They shape the kind of state that we become. SB 459 moves New Hampshire toward a system where exclusion can be justified under the law. Once a precedent like SB 459 is established, it doesn't stay contained. It becomes the foundation for expanding state-sanctioned discrimination against a specific group of Granite Staters. SB 459 does not openly authorize discrimination, it redefines it so that certain forms of discrimination no longer count as unlawful. It follows the same pattern as the bills that have come before it, only this time framed as a workaround.
Thank you. Your time is up. Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Do you have, excuse me, Mr. Chair, do you have written?
Oh, yeah, if you have written testimony, please pass it in. That'd be great. Next, I'm going to call on Sam Hawkins, please.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. For the record, my name is Sam Hawkins. I'm here today representing NAMI New Hampshire in opposition to Senate Bill 459. I've sat in front of this committee a few times now and discussed the documented mental health impacts of stigma and discrimination on all people, but especially transgender and non-binary people. That is in my written testimony, so I won't repeat it, but I do think it would be incredibly unfortunate to not focus in on how this bill in particular singles out mental health treatment facilities. Proponents of this bill may talk about how it is technically more narrowly tailored, but we are gravely concerned about the provisions in the bill that would allow classification in mental health treatment facilities. In these instances, we are talking about people who are in acute psychiatric crisis and are involuntarily committed to a treatment facility against their will. With the mental health impacts of stigma and discrimination in mind, being involuntarily committed to an environment where you are supposed to be recovering from your crisis and then being continually exposed to that damaging stigma and discrimination will harm their recovery and their outcomes in the long term. We do have a great working relationship with many of the folks who operate the mental health treatment facilities here in New Hampshire. I'm confident they would do everything they can to improve the recovery of folks who end up in their facilities. But for this bill to allow that flexibility to expose these people to discrimination in their treatment and recovery is incredibly concerning. As such, we do strongly urge the committee to vote down Senate Bill 459. Thank you.
Questions for this witness? Yes, Representative Horgan.
I think the part about mental health centers seems on the face of me unnecessary, but how do mental health centers handle people who are trans? I mean, it seems to me, just as a layperson, I've never been in an acute psychiatric facility, that they pretty much have to accept people the way they are. So if somebody comes in, regardless of how you feel about the issue of biological sex, if somebody comes in who identifies as female, you can't really trust. I don't see how you can trust them. Is it possible to trust them? Treat them effectively if you disregard the fact that they identify as one gender rather than the other. So.
Thank you for the question, Representative. I would hesitate to speak about what the mental health facilities here in the state, what their actual practices are, just because I'm not in those facilities, so I don't want to speak authoritatively on that. But as I mentioned, we do have a close relationship with these folks, and I'm sure they prioritize the wellness and recovery of their clients, which does include, in many instances, creating and accepting supportive environment for their recovery.
Great, thanks.
Thank
Other
you.
questions for this witness? Yes, Representative Tur.
Yeah, thanks, and thanks for taking the question. Again, referring back to one of the other similar bills that we heard recently, the sponsor of that bill asserted that trans people are mentally ill as a blanket statement. I just was wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Thank you very much for the question, and I do have more information that would refute a claim like that in my written testimony that I did not include in my verbal comments, but we do see through a vast wealth of research that transgender and non-binary young people in particular see higher rates of negative mental health outcomes, such as symptoms of depression, anxiety, and suicidality. But that research also consistently demonstrates that there's nothing inherent within their identity that causes those negative mental health outcomes, but it is rather more often a result of not getting access to the supports, services, and accepting environments that they need to thrive.
Other questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, I'm going to call on Michael Haley, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. My name is Michael Haley. I'm from Derry, New Hampshire, and I am here on behalf of GLBTQ Legal Advocates and Defenders, also known as GLAD Law. My written testimony goes into greater detail, so I won't belabor it here. This bill does not really make any meaningful improvements over the bills that have already been vetoed by 2 governors. The sponsor who spoke talked about compelling state interest, and you'll see in my testimony that the only court to consider whether there is a compelling state interest in determining that women, non-transgender women, have a privacy right to a space devoid of transgender women has concluded they do not have that right. There is certainly a right to privacy, but the right to a transgender-free space is not a constitutionally protected right. And this bill is not narrowly tailored because it is just creating a blanket exclusion. The way that you make a narrow tailoring, the way you narrowly tailor something is to look at individual circumstances and determine what is right in those particular circumstances, not to draw a line and say everybody on this side of the line gets this and everybody on this side of the line gets that. Speaking very briefly about sports, there was some discussion about the Olympics at the beginning of this and how the Olympic Committee has changed its rules to require SRY testing. The Olympics allowed transgender women to compete since 2004. And in all that time, only one single transgender athlete ever made it to the Olympic Games, and she did not medal. So it's just simply not the case that even at the elite levels of sports that cisgender women, non-transgender women are going to be losing out on major athletic opportunities because they are competing against transgender women. In the 90s, there was this genetic testing to determine who could play on a female sport in the Olympics, in the Barcelona and the Atlanta Olympics. And through that testing, 20 women who had lived their entire lives as women, had in some cases even given birth, found out that they had an intersex condition and became disqualified. And in one case, a woman was so distraught by this that she committed suicide. So it's not harmless to impose these lines on people. And then the very last thing that I'll say, because I know we're tight on time, is that one of the representatives mentioned PREA, the Prison Rape Elimination Act. And that is a federal law that requires, again, individualized determination when housing inmates in prisons based on their risk factors for rape.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Your time is up. Questions for this witness? Yes, Representative Manos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for taking my question. You mentioned an individualized determination being required under case law. Where would those individualized decisions be made? Would they be made at a state level or more appropriately at the local level?
Thank you for the question. Prior to there being a ban on transgender girls participating in sports in the state of New Hampshire, the Athletic Association had a policy that required schools to make that individualized assessment. And it's based not just on the individual student, but on the characteristics of the sport, on the level of the sport, right? So elementary school students are not the same as high school students. Golf does not present the same safety risks as tackle football. And varsity is not the same as intramural. So and also looking at the individual, determining things like their hormone levels, have they been on puberty blockers, medication, have they undergone hormone therapy? All those types of individual considerations were part of the Athletic Association's policy prior to HB 1205 2 years ago that instituted a broader ban. And in that time, there really were not reported problems with transgender girls participating on teams. Nobody got a scholarship or took a scholarship away from somebody else. Nobody made a team that kept somebody else off of a team.
All right. Other questions? Representative Horton.
Yes, to get back to what you were saying when your 2 minutes ran out, I guess it's fair. Is it fair to say, first of all, that non-gender conforming people, whether they're trans or somehow different in other way, are not a new phenomenon in the prisons, and don't they already have ways of dealing with this issue in order to keep everybody, to keep those prisoners safe so they can serve out their terms in peace, just like gender conforming inmates have the right to? Is that fair to say?
Yes, thank you for the question. The Prison Rape Elimination Act requires looking at each individual inmate. And in many cases, that has led to a conclusion that a transgender woman should be housed in a male facility based on their risk. And in many cases, it's resulted in a determination that there is an unacceptable risk of sexual assault and rape by housing a transgender woman in a male facility. And PREA has required that they be housed in a women's facility. So it's really about these individualized assessments, not a blanket ban.
All right. Other questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Next, I'm gonna, call on Brownwind, okay. Brownwind, is it Gill? Sims, I'm sorry, okay, thank you.
Okay.
Please,
No, the other way.
there you go.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Gannon and members of the Judiciary Committee. My name is Bronwyn Sims, and I am the leader of the Independent Women's Network Southern New Hampshire chapter, which supports practical policies that protect freedom, opportunity, and safety for women and girls. I also proudly signed the amicus brief filed by the Independent Council on Women's Sports with 135 other female athletes in the U.S. Supreme Court case, United States versus Skirmetti. I rise in strong support of Senate Bill 459 as amended. I appreciate the committee's work to protect biological sex in athletics and involuntary facilities. However, the bill still needs to be strengthened further to fully protect women and girls. As currently amended, SB 459 only covers athletic competitions and prisons or juvenile detention centers. It does nothing to protect women and girls in the most vulnerable places like restrooms, locker rooms, showers, or changing areas. This is not theoretical. Just last week, on March 31st, 2026, the U.S. Department of Education opened a Title IX investigation into the Contoocook Valley School District in Peterborough, New Hampshire, for allowing biological males into girls' restrooms and locker rooms. Female students complained about privacy violations, yet the district put gender ideology over girls' dignity. Assistant Secretary Kimberly Ritchie stated clearly, young women should never feel unsafe or uncomfortable in their intimate spaces because their school leaders care more about gender ideology than protecting girls' dignity and privacy. As a girls' gymnastics coach, athlete, and survivor of male violence, I have personally experienced the intrusion of a man who believes he is a woman in my locker room at the Keene YMCA. That violation of
I'm sorry,
privacy.
Excuse me, your time is up.
All right, thank you.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, I'm going to call on David Trumbull, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is David Trumbull from the town of Ware, and I oppose this bill. I'll just focus on 2 points. First is the bill is not narrowly tailored as it says it is on page 1, line 22, and thus it's unconstitutional. It's a ban, and a ban is not narrowly tailored. Let me give you 2 examples. One would be a transgender girl who begins socially transitioning in elementary school, takes puberty blockers, then takes hormone therapy. They will never have gone through a male growth spurt. They will not have testosterone. The studies are very clear. There is absolutely no competitive advantage for this child in competition. There's no reason why this bill should not make an exception for this case. That would be a narrowly tailored bill. That would also be a less restrictive. Both of those are required under constitutional law when you're dealing with fundamental rights. A second example would be a person who is intersex. This bill does not even contemplate nor acknowledge the existence of intersex people. Which division does an intersex person compete in? And it certainly would not be narrowly tailored. Onto the mental health facilities, I would like to point out that under RSA 135C, sections 56 and 57, it's a fundamental right to receive treatment if you are civilly committed, and the patient has the right to give consent before the administration of treatment. If you are going to take a transgender woman and put them in the male unit on a mental health facility, that would be counter to their personal identity. That would not be a treatment program that they would consent to, and it certainly would not meet their right to treatment under the state. So for both of these reasons, I would urge you to oppose this bill. Is there any time left, sir?
You have 17 seconds.
Well, I guess then I just would add in about the prison issue that came up. Transgender women are 13 times more likely to be sexually assaulted in prison, and almost 50% have been raped. So all aspects of this bill suffer from deficiencies, I think, from a constitutional standpoint. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for this witness? Yes, Representative Page.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for taking my question. Mr. Trumbull, is it your view that this legislature can't use magic words like narrowly tailored, and that makes it so?
That's a really great question. It's what the law says. It's narrowly tailored, but it is not narrowly tailored. To do so, as the attorney just testified, a ban cannot be narrowly tailored. So there's plenty of situations that we all could look at and say, well, that doesn't really work. In fact, Senator Gannon said he described the 6'8" basketball player as a unique problem, and he says, I don't write my bills for the 1 or 2%. I only write them for the 98 or 99%. That's not a narrowly tailored bill. Transgender people make up about 1% of the population. This bill is about 1% that it's discriminating against, but he views another group of people as a problem. I think it just doesn't make any sense.
All right. Representative Horgan, do you have a question?
Well, this is more a question of the chair, but I could direct to Mr. Trumbull, which is the subparagraph 2 lines 19 to 23. That is language, I guess, it would actually go into a future edition of the RSA. So it's not merely a finding like we see in many other bills. Is that correct? Or that all this language that we have doubts, Mr. Trumbull has doubts about, is something that, if this bill is passed and signed into law, would in fact be in the RSAs alongside the more substantive part of it. Is that correct?
Thank you, Representative Horgan. And I think then if this bill were challenged in court, it would be up to the New Hampshire Supreme Court to determine whether or not it really was narrowly tailored. So,
other questions? Yes, Representative Tripp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for taking my question. What would you say the biological sex of a transgender woman is?
well, first of all, thank you for the question, Representative Tripp. The bill does not define biological sex. So that's the burden of proof to define that term, I think, should be on the author of the bill. So that question should first be directed to Senator Gannon. But as for me, I would say there's just so many, listening to these hearings, and there are so many different ways to look at that question that I don't think it's one that you can say black and white. There's genetics, that's one thing. There's intersex people have there's many, many different variations in intersex. There's some people have surgery. There's chromosomes. There's so many different ways of looking at it that I don't think you can say simply black and white, one or the other. And that's why when people say, I identify as a man or woman, and it's somebody who has transitioned, I think we should just respect their determination.
All right. Other questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you. Whoop, I'm sorry. Oh, whoops, Representative Tripp, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Follow up?
Yes.
Could I direct you to page 2 of the bill, line 16, where it does define biological sex?
I don't have a copy. Can you please read it? Okay, so you're saying that on page 2, line 16, it says biological sex means the male and female biological sexes, right? And you say that's a definition. It's defining the word with itself. I mean, that's just kind of basic English grammar. You can't define a word by using itself. There has to be some reference point.
Follow?
No, thank you.
All right. Other questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Next, I'm going to call on Luddy William Garth. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Luddy Willow Garth or Gorth. Ah, thank you.
Lady Willow Earth.
Lady Willow Earth. Sorry about that.
Forgive me if I stumble over my words. This is the first time I've ever testified. Honorable members of the Judiciary Committee, my name is Willow Earth. I live in Derry, and I oppose this bill. As a trans woman, I feel this bill is discriminatory in an attempt to make it harder for trans people to live their lives. If trans kids are limited to using locker rooms that do not align with their gender identity, they will be discouraged from participating in sports and other recreational activities altogether. I also feel this bill is dangerous because trans women in prison systems are placed in, if trans women are placed in prison systems that are for men, this would leave them more vulnerable to sexual violence. Being transgender is not a fad, is not a trend. There's evidence of trans people that goes back to ancient times. And yeah, that's all I have to say. Please vote against this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, I'm going to call on Cole Wimsett, please.
Hello.
Hi.
So we've heard a lot of people talk, and as usual, everyone who's opposed to the bill is eloquent and kind, and I'm here for a different thing. How fucking dare you? Or any
Okay.
of you
No.
any of
Let me,
you trans,
wait,
though.
let's stop for a minute, please. If you intend to engage in profanity, I'm going to ask you to
where we
leave.
draw a line.
And if
Okay.
you don't leave, then I will have you
Okay,
escorted
so
out.
profanity,
Okay?
no. Genocide.
So let's
That's good.
start again.
Just to be clear.
Okay? Let's
Yeah.
start again.
So are any of you trans?
I'm sorry. We're here for you to give testimony, not to ask questions.
Yeah. Well, I've seen you ask questions, so it's probably best.
No, we get to ask the questions. You do not.
As I have seen. So this bill is not about bathrooms or prisons or anything else. It's about genocide. It's a stepping stone. It's thinly veiled. They've done it 3 more times here, countless more times elsewhere. Everyone knows what it is. You just sit here and pretend like it's a reasonable question. And you ask the morons who sit here defending the bill, and they don't even know what's in it. They can't define anything. You ask the guy first about every part of it, and he's like, I'll have to get back to you. When? You're doing the thing now. What is that? That's pathetic. So, like, honestly, to watch this again, like, there's 400 of you. What are you doing? What are you doing? This is pathetic. So, yeah, I don't really have that much to say because there's not that much to say about it. You're going to get some ghouls talk about how they're afraid for women and girls, and we'll hear that over and over again, and it won't mean anything. And you can see the statistics, and you can see the actual people who suffer from this, and you'll just ignore it. And I know that not all of you are this. I know that some of you, based on your questions, are like, yeah, this is absurd. But, like, to even work with these people, those
Thank
of you
you.
who are opposed
Your
to the
time
bill,
is up. Thank you. Questions for this witness? Representative Horgan.
Well, the word that, and I probably would have preferred not to hear it at the hearing, but isn't that a word that the President of the United States recently used in his Easter message to the nation?
No, is there a question here for this witness?
Isn't that the same word that the President of the United States used on Easter in an Easter message to the nation?
And the President of the United States wasn't testifying here. If he was, the same rule would apply to him.
Oh, good. Yes, thank you.
Next, any other questions?
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Great.
Next, I'm going to call on Sarah Terrell, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chair,
Morning.
members of the committee. I just submitted my written testimony, so you can read that, and I won't go into too much detail, but in my 2 minutes, I just wanted to share 2 anecdotes with you. My name is Sarah Terrell. I live in Plymouth, New Hampshire. I have a 17-year-old transgender daughter. I wanted to let you know that my daughter was diagnosed with anxiety and depression when she was relatively young, around 11. She's been in counseling since that time. She started receiving gender-affirming care about the age of 13. At 14, when she was ready to start hormone blockers, puberty blockers, her therapist wrote a letter in support of this care. And at that time, after receiving gender-affirming care for 1 year, her therapist noted that she no longer displayed symptoms of anxiety or depression. So I want to be clear that 1 year's worth of gender affirming care completely removed my daughter's anxiety and depression. This is life-saving care. The other example I would like to give you is that last year in high school, my daughter is now 17, a boy in her school told her that he would like to hate, and I won't use the word, F-U-C-K, her. This bill would force my daughter into a locker room with a man that threatened to assault her. Why is my daughter's safety any less important than anybody else's safety? Those are the two things I wanted to share aside from my written testimony. Thank you for your time.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, I'm going to call on Tanya Grappo. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I mispronounced that.
That's fine. So I didn't come with any prepared statements. I didn't really have time. But like a couple of people have noted here, it's really devastating for a transgender person to face the prospect of going to an institution and probably being denied their HRT. I've been transitioning for a little over a year now, and I have to tell you that before I started transitioning, I was a completely different person. I was not a happy person, to say the least. But
Point of order.
I am very.
Hang on, what's the point of order?
I would ask the chair to ask the witness to keep the remarks germane. I don't believe HRT is in question in the bill.
Sorry?
No, I'm overruled. Go ahead.
Okay. So yeah, this brought me a lot of peace in my life. So the prospect of perhaps maybe for some reason going to prison and not getting my HRT is a terrifying and devastating prospect for me. At the same time, we have other bills that are aimed to make it illegal for me to use a women's restroom when I reach the point and I'm being accepted in women's spaces and passing as a woman, where I would not look appropriate to go into a men's room at that point. If that would land me in jail, and then that would actually get me into a situation where I could be assaulted or lose access to my health care, that's actually really terrifying. So like the combination of these bills is terrifying to us. So I've seen legal cases arguing for, indifference toward trans people being put into men's facilities and, even up to cruel and unusual punishment. But I think if we take a step back and look at these bills altogether, if you take them as they are, it's kind of like a terror tactic aimed at us.
All right.
Is how I feel.
Thank you.
That's my statement.
All right, questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, I'm going to call on Amy Terravecchia. All right. I got it. I got it. I was closer this time.
Hello, committee members. For the record, my name is Amy Terravecchia. I'm with 603 Equality. I'm here to oppose this bill. My testimony today is going to be very similar to testimony I delivered last week on a different bill, because we keep seeing the same legislation, same sorts of legislation again and again. So we've heard from numerous bills from numerous constituents why bills like these are bad for New Hampshire. I thought it might be helpful to summarize what we've heard to date across multiple years in committee hearings. We've heard from New Hampshire residents who have been clear about how the policing and the movement of trans people is discriminatory. We've heard from New Hampshire residents who have raised concerns about how enforcement of these types of policies creates safety and privacy concerns for all Granite Staters and boils down to deputizing strangers to police folks on the basis of their physical presentation. We've heard from experts who have outlined that this rinse and repeat legislation is likely to be vetoed, just as its predecessors have. And we'd heard from scientists, doctors, and intersex individuals who have attempted to educate both houses of the legislation on how both anatomy and gender are too nuanced to effectively legislate. We've heard from New Hampshire residents who want government out of their locker rooms, who want the government out of the business of legislating bodily autonomy entirely. And we've heard from parents who are concerned about how these bills would create situations where a stranger could call into question their child's gender, triggering an inquisition about their bodies. We've also heard from cis women who have outlined safety and privacy concerns of enforcing a policy like this. And yet both legislative bodies seem to prioritize the voice of out-of-state interest groups and use the same playbook as national party politics to distract from real issues and concerns facing New Hampshire. I talk to New Hampshire residents every day, and I'll tell you what they think of this legislation. It is divisive identity politics. It's designed to distract us, it is dilatory, it is discriminatory, and they are tired of this nonsense. I urge you to listen to the overwhelming consensus of voices of your constituents and recommend ITL on this piece of legislation.
Thank you. Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you. Next, I'm going to call on Beth Scare, please.
Hi, I'm Beth Scare from Nashua. Everyone knows why sports and prisons are segregated by sex. It's common sense. All of these people pretending that it isn't dangerous to have men in women's sports and prisons are either cuckoo or lying. How can anyone go along with letting men invade women's sports and locking up with women with dangerous criminal men? It's insane, and everyone knows it. Please vote ought to pass on SB459 to protect women.
Thank you. Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much. Next, I'm going to call on Scott Files, please.
All right. Good morning, committee members. I have a feeling that we have a time limit today. Is that correct?
Two minutes. Please.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'll summarize quickly. I've spoken at quite a few similar bills, and the stance that I'm able to provide, the perspective that I can add to these conversations is that I myself am a transgender individual. I am a man. My name is Scott. I'm a brother, an uncle, a son, a godfather. In every way, I live my life as any other normal man. The transgender aspect of my identity is just an adjective that describes my past. I was raised as a girl from birth. That wasn't the identity that I solidified in myself as I developed. And in the same way that I was raised a girl and am now a man, trans women have just had the exact opposite experience. Bills like these are specifically targeted at trans women who are women, potentially not from birth, but they are women and they deserve the same rights and access to women's facilities and sports and incarceration scenarios as any other woman, the same way that I experience the rights of men in those spaces. And I hope that helps your decision making, and I'm happy to take any questions if you have any.
All right, thank you. Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, I'm going to call on Executive Counselor Karen Leott Hill, please.
Good morning, Chairman, members of House Judiciary. It is nice to be with you this morning. I am Karen Leo Hill, Executive Counselor for District 2. I am a member of the executive branch, as you know, and part of my job is to exercise oversight of the fiscal management of our state, including looking at risk management and legal exposure. Failure to comply with the Prison Rape Elimination Act has grave consequences potentially for our state, including the loss of federal funds and legal liability. 2 governors have already vetoed similar legislation. We know this legislation is not good for the state, and it is not good for taxpayers. To reference the analogy made by the bill sponsor earlier about the loaf of bread, I used to own a diner, and so I'm familiar with baking. Actually, I'm very familiar with making pancake batter. And I can tell you that if you make an accident and substitute salt for sugar, and you have a very salty batch of pancakes, you don't want 75% of that batch. And I think sometimes legislation is the same way. If a bill is bad for the state and bad for taxpayers, we don't want any of it. So I would encourage you to oppose this bill and vote it ITL. Thank you.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry, Caden Bill. I wrote it pretty quickly. Hello, everyone, and thank you for hearing our testimony today. I'm Caden Dole. I'm from Newmarket, and I'm here as a private citizen, and I believe in common sense. So I'm going to state a few things that I see as common sense, and I'm curious, genuinely curious, if you all would agree. The first thing I see is that this is an incredibly nuanced issue, right? And if anything, the questions that each of you have asked and that everyone who has testified have brought up highlight just how nuanced it is. There might be a situation that makes sense for one person to be allowed to participate on a certain team, and there might be a situation where it doesn't make sense for someone to be allowed to participate on a team or to be housed in a certain way. I think another piece that I think we can all agree on is that there's some concern for fairness and for safety with this. And I absolutely believe, like many people, that we should be considering the fairness and the safety of everybody involved. I believe that's part of your job, right? And I believe it's a part of a job for all of us who live here in this state. The concern that I have with this specific bill is that it provides a blanket solution that doesn't fit the nuance that this issue deserves and doesn't consider the safety of every individual. As a resident of New Hampshire, I've been increasingly concerned about the extremist positions on both sides of this issue, and this bill very much represents one of those extremist sides instead of focusing on keeping all Granite Staters safe. So I ask you to veto this bill to allow space for a better, more nuanced bill that will protect everybody. Thank you.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you.
Thanks.
One more. So, I just, before I get to the next witness, I just, with regard to 464, my understanding is that the prime sponsor needs to be in criminal justice to introduce another bill. So what I'm going to do, after we finish the hearing on this, on 459, I'm going to recess for a short period of time so that Senator Abbas may do that, and then we'll pick up in about 10 minutes or 15 minutes on the hearing on 464. All right, so next on 459, Louise Spencer, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee. Thank you for taking my testimony here today. I am speaking on my own behalf and also opposing this bill on behalf of the Kent Street Coalition, which is an all-volunteer grassroots advocacy organization. We oppose this bill for all of the reasons that have so eloquently been stated here. We believe that these bills, in bringing them forward and also in their impact, will cause great pain for many people, unnecessary pain, I would add. But I will speak to the fact that I see this bill does not have a fiscal note, and I am really concerned as a taxpayer that these bills will end up in court, and they will end up costing the state quite a bit of money. And as a taxpayer, I'm tired of hearing one bill after another that is not addressing the very real needs of Granite Staters. Let's get back to the business of thinking about how we make our state stronger. This bill does nothing to do that. In fact, it makes us weaker, and we'll just end up spending lots of energy and money that doesn't need to be spent. So thank you for taking my testimony.
Thank you. Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much. All right. Now, is there anyone else who wishes to be heard on Senate Bill 459? I'm sorry, you've already testified, have you not? No, no. Anyone who has not testified who wishes to be heard on 459? Seeing none, I'm going to close the hearing on Senate Bill 459.